welcome to this week's episode of Leadership Soundbites with my new friend and connection, Dr. Bryan Fine. So Bryan is founder, CEO, and doctor, right, at Percentric and hashtag awesome single dad. Welcome. I met Bryan on LinkedIn. You stood out to me, sir, and I've shared this with you from a post that you did because it was real. It was authentic. It was this coming from this space of reflection that I think a lot of docs go through and a lot of humans go through. And I appreciate it. It caught my attention and I wanted to know more about you. So here we are.
I appreciate that.
Yes, I'm going to kick us off with a quote, Steve Jobs, that just felt like you and this thing, and I think what a lot of us are living through is your time is limited. Don't waste it trying to live someone else's life. And I think for me, when I think about this quote in the world that we're in, because you and I had an offline conversation, it was around like navigating LinkedIn or navigating Facebook and that balance between 100% professional of who we are and the role that we do, the title that we hold, and who we are as humans, the other 24 hours in the clock, right? And when I think about that, I think that what stood out for me about you was the authentic part of you with that reflection from that. And I think that's the thing that catches people's attention. It's not the prepackaged, scripted, this is what I'm supposed to say space, but there's some balance about, I'm going to give you a thought that maybe can help you move forward. And I'm going to keep, a chunk of me behind, but I'm going to give you a glimpse into what it is, the rest of the story of who I am and what I'm living. Again, my 2 cents on when I think about that. And so welcome to the conversation, Bryan. And I'm enjoying chatting with you today. What's on your mind?
All good, Michelle. I appreciate the time. And yeah, I mean, I obviously happy to segue into, whichever areas you want to talk about. We've had some really great offline conversations for sure. And I think part of it is, even me commenting on how having this conversation with you as sort of prep for a podcast already feels different, right, than some of these other podcasts where I feel more the need to sort of stay on brand.
Yeah.
And tell people what I do, which is important. Like, I don't want to dismiss that. But right, it all comes from a different place. And I think a lot of us, and so what can I speak for right now? I can speak for, a middle-aged professional, single dad, young kids, like trying to figure things out, entrepreneur, right?
Mm-hmm.
So risks and, trying to sort of speak to that sort of true multifaceted lane. Even within that lane, there's many lanes. And so, yeah, I'm glad I was able to do that a little bit and catch your attention, I suppose.
Yeah, but I'm not the only one. I'm not the only one. So what I'd love to do, because the series that we have right now is around lessons in leadership, right? And so you're a doc not in the traditional corporate healthcare system, right? And so I would love for you to share if there's a time when you look back to go, you know what? This was like one of the more defining moments. This is one of the things that I look now and I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today if I didn't do that then. Or if there's an opportunity of a do-over and you'd look back and go, I would have done this sooner or differently or whatever. What comes to mind for you for those layered questions that if you're a coach out there, don't do what I just did to Bryan?
Yeah, no, it's funny to say, like, because of stuff I've gone through recently in my past, sort of domestic social, like recent past, it's given me time in sort of a cliche sense to look back. And I think one of the funny things, if that's the right word to say, is I probably shouldn't have been a doctor. Like, my old man was a doctor. I have like pursued this course, ever since I was a tyke. And within that same journey, I've been a starter, sort of an entrepreneur, creative. I mean, my brother and I tried to start a hat company when we were in college. I started a creative writing journal while I was in medical school. I think I told you earlier, I played music. I was traveling the world, while a doctor, a younger doctor, was a big part of my life for a while. So there's I've always felt that being a doctor was actually very safe. I feel like almost anybody can become a doctor with a resolve. There's a pathway to that, but there's not a pathway necessarily as easy to this sort of build your own, do your own thing. And so, to sort of fast forward, I do get to say with absolute certainty, like I'm doing right now what I want to do. It's super cool at 50 years old to be practicing a kind of medicine that patients like, that I like. When I tell people what I do, it's amazing. It has led me to burn a lot of bridges, directly and indirectly. I mean, not a lot, people don't believe in this kind of medicine, or the person I am who would practice this kind of medicine doesn't fit in this box of the way things are normally done. And maybe that's a bit of an excuse, but it certainly is the way I feel. It has affected, again, my personal relationships as far as the risks around entrepreneurism and moving away from being a doctor to being an entrepreneur, in some sort of sense, and maybe trying to handle things around that differently. Um, and then it still has the uncertainty right now. It doesn't come with the real, the 401k that you want, or the pension. You still, most of us in this situation, I'm not coming to you from my yacht, with a satellite link up right now. Like, I still got work to do. I still got kids to raise. I still have, single parenthood and divorce situation to navigate. And it's different. But I am doing what I want to do. And I hesitate to tell, like, I mean, I know I've written some posts like, everybody just jump, just do what you want to do. Like, it's obviously not that easy. And I don't know that it's for everybody. And not everybody succeeds. I don't know if I've succeeded. I mean, right now I'm okay, but I don't think there's a lot of stories about the people who are right in the middle of it. Right? We read the stories of Steve Jobs, like the quote you read at the beginning, who went through that journey, and then dies of pancreatic cancer. Like, there's who knows. But right, for him, there's a million others who struggle much harder, and all those in betweens. So I'm an in between guy right now, but it's going okay, I guess.
It's my brain, and for anybody who knows me knows my brain goes in 50 zillion directions when I hear stuff. And when I hear you talk, there's a few things that came to mind. Is that you were then as a child, you were through young adulthood, you are now forever have this entrepreneurial spirit. That's the thing, right? You're gonna boldly go where no man has gone before. And you're gonna pave your own path, your own everything. And what's interesting is you've taken, and part of what you're doing is, it almost feels like where medicine and docs started out. They met people where they were at. They went to home visits, they went to whatever. And maybe, I don't know if you're doing home visits or not, but you're connecting with people where they're at. And it's interesting because I think you're taking it back to basics and not trying to overcomplicate, because healthcare is a freaking complicated
So
system. I mean,
complicated.
we've
So complicated.
overcomplicated so much stuff. It feels like you've just gone, okay, let's just, okay, and this is the stuff. This is the main stuff. How do we support the main stuff? And yeah, you're gonna have people that you talk about burning bridges, but I think what happens is people get nervous and uncomfortable around things that they don't know about, that, to your point, isn't air quotes safe, right? Because if you go to work for corporate America, which a lot of docs do in healthcare, there's the structure there. They can plug in. Again, there's high rate of burnout, resilience isn't that great. There's a structure that's overloaded with the complexity of, everything, of keeping up with electronic health record, medical record. And you've gone away and stripped it back to here's the key stuff that matters. Let's just engage with the patient. Let's connect with them. And to your point, you're living life on your own terms. I think one of your posts was you were out with your daughter, and because you're connected with with your patients on your phone, you could receive the message. You responded rather quickly, right? And then you re-engage with your daughter on the mountainside or wherever you were walking. That's an awesome life.
Right. It's one of those prisms, though, where sort of you could also look at it without context. And this is, I think, what some of the spirit of the post was. I think I mentioned it was without context, you could look at it as like, well, shouldn't you be giving all your attention to your daughter, right? Like you're removing yourself with technology. And so it's sort of straddling that idea. Like everything I do increasingly has been around my kids, and there's something cliche about that, but I do everything around my kids. And there are times where that success puts me in situations where, again, at 3 o'clock in an afternoon, where by rule I can be home with my kids, I need to step away for work. And I still struggle with that probably more than I should. But yeah, it's uh, it's been a journey, and I don't know if like this creative thing that I have, or that I believe I've done through my life. Like I don't think it's a switch. So I don't think everybody can do it. I guess I have this sort of track record of risk and doing some of this
Mhm.
stuff. So as we were talking about, like, I don't know that you could just tell somebody like just jump and go do these things, right? Because there's this human part to it. Um, and as well, when I look back on that journey and I look at bridges burned, and we talk about people getting stuck in corporate America, and even revisiting some of the biggest challenges I've had in a professional environment, I would still say that most doctors and most people in healthcare are
Mhm.
good people. I
Mhm. Oh
think
yeah.
I think it's a very significant siloing effect that has sort of misaligned stakeholders in a way that, people trying to do what they perceive or what they think is good things just conflicts with other people's core beliefs. I know I've conflicted with other people's core beliefs pretty regularly, uh, as far as just the way I practice medicine, whether it's somebody trolling me online about whether you can text in context of HIPAA, and sort of running through that race all over and over again, or I come from a hospital-based background, um, where I think some of my creativity and entrepreneur ideologies were very much embraced and utilized and exploited, if that's the right word. But then also where some of the other things that I brought to the table, or some of my areas of less strength, um, didn't quite fit in so much. And so that's been part of this. And um, I think, from a very specifically from a leadership perspective, people have found that they can count on me to build and create. I think sustaining is hard. I think novelty wears off in every, like, right, professional, personal relationship,
Yeah.
and there's work that needs to be done. I think the work that needs to be done is increasingly complicated in layered, complex systems like hospitals.
Mhm.
Still difficult in a one-to-one situation like a marriage, but those other ones, and that's why I think you see a lot of people move around all the time, right? It's hard to be a CEO for more than X number of years. It's hard to be a doctor. Some of the best guys I know, you're in a system for an X amount of years, um, and then just going somewhere new helps. So, I've taken all of those into consideration, and I've landed where I've landed. And I'll go back to the fact, like, I get to say that I'm doing exactly like what I want to do,
Mhm.
certainly as a doctor. And we'll see. The book's not over yet. There's still some chapters to be righted, but we'll see how this goes.
Um, Thank you for that. The thing you and I were talking before, and I think it was the original post that caught my attention, is you had just come off shift in a hospital. So what and you and I've talked about this offline, is I appreciate the fact that you're still connected at whatever frequency that you go and do shifts in the hospital, um, to that system. I think there's value in that. There's a lot of similar stuff to where physicians have become physician leaders, right? So they take administrative roles, whatever it may be, and they're still connected at some level doing direct patient care. For you, it's you're in this different world of delivering care to patients, right? A different system, if you will. And yet you still stay grounded in the traditional, more traditional system in America of what the delivery of healthcare is in an acute care environment. And from my perception, there's some value in that. Do you agree or disagree?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think the rote answer would be I agree. Of course, I agree. Um,
Please don't do that.
yeah, but to expound a little bit, I think there's a lot of different parts to it. There's a self-serving part from a financial perspective. There's a self-serving part from like I got to keep some skills in place just in case.
Hmm?
There's a quote selfless part where the first I'm helping in a place of need where they need somebody.
Yeah.
There's the strategic part of like, yes, being in an environment where I know how to work in a hospital. I tend to work well. For the most part, I think I'm finding that I'm enjoying not being in a leadership position in a hospital right
Hmm.
now and being sort of a worker bee.
Hmm.
I don't know that I'd want to go. I think I'm realizing why I wouldn't want to go back and do what I had done before. I don't
Okay.
necessarily regret that I did it before, but yeah, the idea, excuse me, the idea of sort of trying to reinsert, when people tell me like, oh, if the things you do now fail, you could always go back to what you were doing. I don't think I could. I mean, for logistic and just like human reasons, like healthcare's it's a challenge. And as you get older as a physician and the natural proclivities that we have as we get older to change and to reflect and to think and to like that's really hard, I think, for a lot of physicians and providers in general. I don't think there's a lot of happy 50-year-old doctors. I'll just be honest with you. I just
Yeah.
don't think there is.
That's the thing I'd love to work on and crack that nut, if you will, because it's not just docs. I think it's a lot of people that get to that place. I'm a huge proponent for mindset matters. And that's part of my coaching, right? Is that we need to shift around to different perspectives to where we can get to this place. To your point, I'm doing what I want to do. And to remind yourself that you're doing what you want to do. We do have choices. We have choices about, the intention we set for ourselves every day. You talked about success. I was with a client earlier and she talked about, she's younger in her career. She's like, how do you know when you're successful? I'm like, well, it's not a destination. It's a state of mind. It's the appreciation for what's going on now. It can't be on the other side of something, right? Because you never get there.
Yeah.
So, for me, it's like when I hear you talking about what you're doing and that you're doing what you want to do, success, what I hear is not attached to, yeah, you can pay your bills and that stuff's covered. It's not this magic dollar amount. It's this feeling of, did I do what I want to do today? Did I have the balance, right? Because when I hear, I'm going to take the child thing and time with our kids, because I think any parent who works and is raising children juggles and struggles with that. I'm taking away from my kids. Because at one point, I was working full time. I was going to college in the evenings full time. And so the time with my family is like shrunk down. But if you compare what you are doing now with before, when you weren't self-employed, weren't doing it, what kind of time do you have with your kids now compared to then?
Well, that's sort of an interesting question. I guess the honest answer is that I've always prioritized kids in the jobs I took, the jobs I
Yeah,
shaped as a leader.
yeah.
I shaped jobs that other people could be with their kids too. I don't think that would be in much dispute. They've always taken these things into account.
Yeah.
What I have found, and I have young kids, right? So my
Yeah.
kids are 8 and 7. They don't hate me yet, right? There's something coming up. I've been told.
They're not teenagers.
Yeah. And so it's one of those things, because we do all of us, like you get, you're addicted to the now, and
Mhm.
that's natural. And so it's hard to quantify and qualify time spent with kids. The way I feel when I'm with my kids in the moment, it's amazing and it's fleeting,
Mhm.
and it's unknown. Like how do you look at it? And you wrap a two parent situation, like a separated parent situation, into that.
Mhm.
It becomes, there's a great deal of uncertainty that you may not have as much of if you're successful in a business sense. There's a little bit
Mhm.
more real time. Money and financial security is important, right?
Mhm.
It is important. And so I I still work hard on that. I certainly haven't found it. I've done my self-help book stuff, and I don't know. One of them that I like is From Strength to Strength by Arthur Brooks. I don't know if you've seen that one yet.
Yeah.
Um, and another one is called Range. Um, and the From Strength to Strength in particular, he speaks to just midlife transitioning
Mhm.
to what's important when you're coming from a place of some success.
Mhm.
And um, so, and I've sort of read a lot in that space, and it speaks to your point. Like, how do you find happy? Think Like a Monk, like some of these other books where you are trying to find that moment to moment happiness when you're doing the dishes or with your kids. It's in the mindfulness space, right? That
Mm.
we hear so much about right now. And it's not a Kool-Aid that I chug, but it's something that I think we all look for. And I'm better at it now, I suppose. Like I think I'm going to tell you that, and then I'm going to, at some point there's going to be a dark room where I'm sucking my thumb, I guess. But like, because that happens too. But yeah, I think it's going okay, and it starts with. I mean, I think it really does start with doing what you want to do. I think I want to say it starts with having great kids and a great family and friends and all that stuff. Um, but you can have those things in a space where you're not doing what you want to do and you still feel a little bit fraudulent. And so I guess my strategy right now for me and for other people is to try and figure out what you want to do, understand your constraints around you, right? You can't, like, I can't go be a Major League Baseball player right now. So there are going to be some constraints. But I definitely do what I want to do.
But you could pay to go to spring training camp. I know that would be an option.
I don't think I can
Just
afford it
saying.
necessarily. It wouldn't be a prudent investment where I have colleges to prepare for. So yeah, it's I think about those things.
The thing that comes to mind for me when you're talking about that, because it's the more years that you've got behind you than what you have ahead of you. I think, we're evolving in maturity. I speak for myself, to where there's certain things I just drop off now. I'm like, you know what? That's not the hill to die on. That's not the thing to worry about. And I look more to gratitude and appreciation for what I do have instead of what I don't have. And that's the kind of thing too. I think that's where the whole mindfulness, the mindset, the perspective matters, right? Are you looking, and people, it's not Pollyanna, right? Because people used to say, oh, Susie Sunshine, the glass is half full, it's not empty. But it literally, I think more clearly, I'm able to accomplish more, I've got more motivation, I'm able to help people better. With this different mindset. And I think that's part of the thing. It's like, yeah, there's a whole bunch of crap that we can do nothing about, right? I can do nothing about our government. I can do nothing about, the state of the economy around, but I can do something about, my world, my investments, my thinking, the people that I engage with. And that's the stuff that I think it's important for us to focus on. Am I making a difference in the world that I can make a difference in?
I think that's, I mean, it's sort of a good segue into like what I do professionally. Like I have a medical practice that can help some people some of the time with some things that
Mm-hmm.
happen to be, in my circle here, largely in the Southeast Virginia, but a little bit outside of that area. Um, it's it's essentially all inclusive. Like I can take people from beginning to end, which defines some scope, right? I'm not doing
Yeah.
surgery. It's not in this subspecialty spaces of knowledge. It's like, let me just let me manage here in between Google and the doctor's office where people just get stuck sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
and let me solve some problems. And it's from the people that I talk to now, a lot of smart, really driven healthcare entrepreneurs and people who want to do good things. I find even in those spaces, I'm still more granular. And I come to the table. It's funny. I was talking to somebody recently, and he a really really driven, interesting fella, and we're talking about some things. And I was like, you go be like Steve Jobs with this idea, and I'll be the Wozniak guy. I'll be in the background, like trying to keep you grounded because like there's these ideas you have, which I think are amazing. If you can
Mm-hmm.
do all of these things in healthcare and change the world and save millions of dollars, whatever, I'm trying to help a woman get her UTI taken care of so she can go to
Yeah.
work and not like and those are different. Those are different visions.
Mm-hmm.
Um and so it speaks to, I think, the way I've evolved. Again, there's people who would see this, and if they knew me from 5 years ago, it may not, it's definitely been something that divorce has played a role in, being a parent of young kids has played a role in, necessity, like being forced. People say, I think it's like people say everything happens for a reason. Like, I don't really believe that. I think everything happens and then you have to go make your reason. Like, and some people don't make a reason. And then not everybody wins when something bad happens, and so you got to go out and make those reasons so that you can look back on it with some sort of and so I think that's the space that you are catching me in right now. Like some of these posts are me saying like WTF, like, you know what? Screw it. I'm gonna try and shed this skin a little bit because it feels more authentic, right? It feels more normal. And I think
More
a
you,
lot of people have stuff there. Yeah.
more you. I just had Frank Sinatra voice in my head singing "I Did It My Way."
Yeah.
Um, I,
Funny you
I,
say that. That was actually that was actually the
what?
song I danced to with my mom at my wedding.
Okay, didn't know
There
that.
you go,
Didn't see that.
tearing open wounds, Michelle. I mean, come on.
What are friends for? What are
Yeah.
friends for? I
That's
want you to just face it, get over it, and move on.
right. Immersion therapy
There
on
you go.
a podcast. Awesome.
Um, I I appreciate this time. There is one question I have because it's just ringing in my head. Well, I've got more than one, Brian, but one that I want to ask. What was the impetus or the final, this is it, I'm going out on my own? Because this whole structure that you have is not just, to your point, someone's texting me. There's an interface and some development around that. What was the final thing that goes, now's the time, boom, I'm off and running?
Yeah, I wish there was like a very sort of noble. I mean, I've always had parallel tracks. I've always preached parallel tracks. I think
Okay.
everybody should have
Side hustle.
something it's sort of a side gig,
Yeah.
but something that you have a little bit more control over. Like even now, I mean, I have multiple tracks.
Yeah.
Parallel. Um, but I've always had a parallel track, and then around 2017, 2018, things came to a head in a previous situation that I was in.
Yeah.
I describe it now as just bridges burned bidirectionally, I think. And so I had to figure it out. I had to figure it out for my family, for myself. I had to figure it out locally because I have kids that are, I mean, stuck as like I can't, I can't just move anywhere I want.
Right.
And so it was in part out of necessity, certainly at
Mm-hmm.
the front end. Some of the growth within from there, wins and losses. I mean, the technology part of what I do, way, way more difficult than I thought, way more expensive than I thought it was going to be. A lot of strife, definitely a contributor to domestic unrest.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you know, I don't know if it's quite as straightforward as would I do it again or not, because I've enjoyed it. It's really cool, and I love having learned this whole world.
Mm-hmm.
And all I knew was that I had this phone or this computer that I look at, and now I understand that a lot better. Um, but yeah, it's for me it was out of necessity, and so I can't sit here and preach to somebody who's sitting in some comfortable space making X number of dollars a year, but who feels uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Just like I can't preach to somebody in a relationship who feels uncomfortable. Like the
Mm-hmm.
grass isn't always greener. And I don't know. I both in a professional and a personal space. I don't know when to tell people or when to advise people to stop fighting. I think there's some fight that needs to be done because there's value and comfort and routine and some security.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point in both spaces, it just so happened for me, both those spaces came at the basically the
Yeah.
exact same
Yeah.
time. And it's probably not unusual where you're dealing with professional strife and personal strife, and they intermix and they affect
Mm-hmm.
each other. And in my case, they kind of both exploded around the same time. I would hope, in some cases you'll salvage both, in some cases one or the other. Um, so I don't know. I don't have a hard answer. Um, it's case by case, right? That's
Yeah.
so cliche, but like case by case.
But this is what I heard. And because at the point that all that blew up, it's not like your only choice was to become self-employed.
Correct.
You were running that thing. So at that moment, when all that stuff is happening, inside of you, I can imagine you're like, okay, I can go work for another system. I can do all this stuff, or I can just go all in with this.
Correct.
And,
I went on.
and
And then COVID hit,
exactly.
right? It was right when COVID
Yeah.
hit.
Oh,
So, I
yeah. Perfect.
mean, throw that on top of whatever else I and everybody else dealt with, like was
Yeah.
dealing with a very difficult time. This sort of pockmark or whatever it's going to be in the historical context.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was it was something.
Yeah.
It was definitely something.
Yeah. But I mean, I look at it, and that's where I think is where people listening or people living their lives, there's these moments, right? That we all have choices. It's not like someone forced you into, okay, you've got it. This is the only thing you can do. You look back and went, okay, actually, now's the time.
Yeah.
There was an intentional decision that you made.
Yeah.
And even though you say now's the time, I look at me and going from self-employment from W-2, it's not an easy path. It takes freaking way longer than what you think it's gonna to get going. Because in your mind, you're like, I got connections, I got whatever. Yeah. And then you've got this ridiculous lead time for people to start realizing, oh, we can tap her for that. Oh, she does that. Yeah, let's do that. And you can't project desperation to anyone, right? I've got this, I'm good. But
Well, I would argue, it's funny you say that. I would argue that part of the journey is in fact projecting desperation.
really,
I would argue that part of my journey, and I think a part of like, um, I mean, I could show you posts that I made, that, I look back on them, and I think for me, it's still like, I think that's part of what I try to navigate. It almost feels like everything in that space, sometimes like I haven't gotten that voice, or I'm moving away from a voice. But I do think, you know, early entrepreneurs, um, and maybe even more so from a healthcare perspective, Michelle, because people look at doctors like you have this sense of status just by who
Mm-hmm.
you are.
Oh yeah.
And when that shifts into an entrepreneurial salesy mode, and you're trying to sell and you're getting, you know, rejected and
Mm-hmm.
by people who normally would see you with some reverence or
Mm-hmm.
some appreciation,
Yeah.
I think every conversation I had for a long time, and be frank, probably still sometimes when I'm trying to like sell stuff, and you call it opportunities, whatever, but when I'm trying to preach about what I do, ultimately with a vision of like getting patients so I can be more successful and put myself in a more comfortable
Yeah.
situation. Um, yeah, I don't think I've scraped all of the desperation out of me yet. I think I think that comes with time. But I'm better than I was. I'm
So
better than
so here's the interesting part, right? And I'll look at time and then we need to wrap up, I know, because otherwise we'll just be here forever. Is the desperation comment that I made is not that you don't feel it. It's just that typically if you're in that space trying to build your business and you're projecting that, it's not confidence that you're building in people. And so it doesn't necessarily move you forward or grow whatever you're trying to grow.
well, I absolutely agree with that, but I think it's part of the process for most
No,
people. I think,
hands down agree with you.
you know, you
Hands
if
down.
you said
Yeah.
this to me 3 years ago, 5 years ago, I would say yeah, and I'd be like, I would come away from the conversation being like, damn, like I'm right in the middle of that right now. Right now, I'm still in the middle of entrepreneurism, but I'm less in the middle of the desperation phase.
Right. So the
Um,
thing is with desperation though, in that space, this is the struggle that you go through, right? As an entrepreneur when you're building. If you're projecting desperation, you're not projecting confidence and credibility. So we
correct.
have to be able to go, okay, I may be feeling that right now. I got to put this over here. I got to ground myself in whatever this is and present with confidence, credibility, optimism, all that, right?
It,
So that's what I mean. You're still feeling it, but holy cow, we got to put this over here and be able to present differently.
it's funny. It's just a softball that I have to sort of. It's the same thing in personal relationships.
Hmm.
When you're in a personal relationship and you are a person in that space that is desperate or demonstrating that,
Hmm.
it's just not a good thing.
No.
It's not an attractive thing. It's
Mm-mm.
not a confidence building thing. It's not gonna close a deal
No,
professionally or personally.
I agree.
But you can't always think your way out of it. You can't always read a book about it and turn it in. Like there's, it's also not a switch. I don't think you can get better at it. You can work at it, but I don't think you wake up one day and say, I'm not going to be desperate today. I think that's inhuman when you find yourself.
That would be, I would love to have a continued conversation with you around that because I think I believe, and I know with certainty, we have way more control than what we give ourselves credit for. Words matter. The most important ones are the ones we tell ourselves. So if you tell me, right, and you're telling your brain that it's not a switch, I can't do it, da 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 da, you're absolutely right. And if you tell yourself that that's not me, this is me, right? Yeah, it's a little scary. And I'm going to go back to the hashtag of the thing I say all the time, face your fears and do it anyway. It's like, holy crap, this is scary stuff right now. This is a moment.
But
Okay,
there's skills behind that. There's skills behind it that you learn by doing.
bingo,
And
bingo,
so maybe we're
bingo.
talking about a dimmer switch instead of a light switch,
Okay,
and where
I
it's
like
just
that. I like that.
all on and off. Like I think there's just,
But there's
and
control. We have
I'll give you that.
ability. Yes.
I'll give
And
you
I
that there's
and I agree with you.
control. But I
Yeah.
also, again, but you're also, when you're going through some of those things professionally, personally, these are the things people are telling you, and you're just having to continually, like, you're just going back and forth with like the doubts and the human part
Yes.
of things.
Yes.
And you go up and down. And so yes, I think
I
we're probably
agree.
on the same page.
I agree. Yeah, we are violently agreeing.
Yeah, it sounds good to me.
Um, you're awesome. I freaking enjoy hanging out with you.
Appreciate it.
Um, so what are one or two things, Brian, you want people to walk away with on all the stuff that we just chatted about? Just pick one.
Oh,
What stands?
shucks. I mean, I think with you in sort of this leadership space, I come from a solopreneur world for the last 5 or 6 years. I come from a quackery. People would look at me like what I do is, I mean, it's not flat Earth stuff, but it's like this doctor by tech stuff that I've been doing
Mm-hmm.
was leading edge, where things are coming. And so I would encourage people to strongly consider taking those steps, parallel tracks initially,
Mm-hmm.
putting in time, training, doing work in spaces, because wherever they are now, there's going to be ups and downs and dissatisfactions, and you want to be in a position to be able to adapt and
Mm-hmm.
turn that dimmer switch
Mm-hmm.
somewhere. So it's in the I'm a fan of people jumping. I'm a fan of independence and
Mm-hmm.
independent thinkers. Um, and I agree with you. You ultimately have control.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, and I mean, I could obviously I could wax on about it, but I think I can leave us with that. I mean, you ultimately
Yeah.
have control. Make a smart choice. It's not same path, not for everybody. And I'm not speaking from a place of absolute success. Like I haven't made it yet. As much as being on Michelle's podcast is really amazing, as much as I love that, like, I'm
Yeah.
happy in this journey right now.
What's that?
And I don't know what making it is, to be frank. So maybe I have, like, in some ways.
You have, but I think it's up to you to figure
There's
out
still work to do, certainly from
what
like with my
what that
security.
definition of. Yeah. And I think there's different
You know,
degrees of, I think there's different degrees of but if you can sit there and say what you did at the beginning, I'm doing what I want to do. If
doing what I
that's
want
not
to do.
success, what the frick is, dude? Seriously.
I'm with you. Well, I got to be doing what I want to do, and then I have mouths to feed, and I have
Different levels,
mi-
different levels.
minds to shape, and I
I know,
have
I know.
that sort of thing.
And you got to celebrate along the way. So the
Yeah.
thing
So
that I would add to what you said, because I do agree with all that stuff, is that for people listening, it's like, what does that mean? How do I identify? What does it look to have another swim lane? Whatever's going on, look around you and the stuff that you're doing now. Do you have a curiosity around things being done differently? Have an idea about things being done differently, and that's where you can start exploring. What does that look like? And it
right.
doesn't mean, to your point, quit your day job, because I worked early in the morning, late at night, and on weekends on my air quote side hustle, right? To be able to support it and do the things that filled my cup. And I was not exhausted at the end of every day. I was energized because I was
Right.
doing stuff that filled my cup.
Yep.
So,
And
um,
find people around you who can support that,
yeah, yeah,
communicate, because you have to then, once you take some of these risks and you do some of these things, you need somebody, you need champions.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, you need people that go, yeah, you're doing this. You are doing it right. And not just going, are you nuts?
And you got to keep yourself in a position to be other people's champion as
Yeah,
well,
yeah,
right? You
agree.
can't just be a suck.
So call me anytime. I'll be your champion.
All right.
This has been Leadership Soundbites with Michelle and Dr. Bryan Fine of Percentric. And until next time, please like, share, subscribe, and have a freaking awesome day. Thank you.